So prayer, this is like this common thing across culture. Everybody, I know some may argue, but everybody prays. They just don't know it. Prayer has been, first it was just, you think about talking to God, right? Prayer is talking to God. But it has this rich history throughout the world of being a means of an attempt, at least, to come into the presence of God. We think about prayer, many times we think about it as I'm directing a thought or a word to God. So I have the intention of, I'm quiet, I'm going to pray, and I'm directing those thoughts towards God. And we think, okay, so that's prayer. Or maybe we speak aloud and we're speaking directly to God, so that's prayer. But what we've talked about here in the past is that, so the thought that I project to God is prayer, but what about all the rest of the thoughts? Now, when we consider the quality of some of our thoughts, we may want to hope that those aren't prayers. But I'm thinking that they are. I mean, what's the difference, right? There's a transmitter in us that when we make a decision to send the thought to God, that one goes there and the other one goes somewhere else in the reject bin or something. I don't know. But so prayer is thought. It's thought. I mean, it could be spoken word, but it has to begin with a thought. And so the quality of our prayers then, of course, have everything to do with the quality of our thoughts. And this attempt to enter into the presence of God, the attempt to get to that place of awe and hopefully revelation, this is all about discipline and how we decide what it is that we decide to do with those thoughts, and which ones we want to keep and which ones we want to release, and which ones we would try to not even have anymore. And this is a practice. So prayer isn't just thought. Effective prayer is a practice. So if you think about, there's a song that we used to sing in Unity. It was Our Thoughts Are Prayers. And the song told that story of it's time to consider the quality of our thoughts. I remember years ago there was a guest speaker when Unity was over on North Main Street, and her opening remarks were quite to the point, and she asked the audience, does anybody out there have any recurring problems? Some issue in your life that you're continually having problems with. And of course, she got people to respond. Here, nobody raises their hands, but people responded in the audience that yes, they had problems. And then she just looked out there for a moment, and it was quiet, and she said, so what are you thinking? What are you thinking? So the quality of your life is directly connected to the quality of your thoughts, which is to say, the quality of your prayers. So there is a power in thought. There's a power to actually, it sets the expectations for us, and sets us into patterns of living so that we can set ourselves up to fall into ruts where we continue to repeat the same type of behavior over and over again, getting the same results and continuing to do it. And if we examine what's going on, we see that we're having these same types of thoughts that continue to occur to us and send us down that same path. So there's a causation. And the first thing is, we think we think about it this way. We got action, We have a thought, we have a feeling, we have a belief, but it goes this way. It goes, I have a belief, I have a thought, I have a feeling, and I have an action. And this is generally the way things are running in our mind. So I have a belief system, and the belief system really is just it is a group of thoughts that are fixed in our mind that we operate within. So we have a belief system about life, we have a belief system about our place in life, we have a belief system about, all sorts of things that really we don't consciously consider, but it's like a framework that's built in our mind. And when and it is designed to keep us looping around and around in this. We think we're having different thoughts, but when we examine it, we are having almost the same thoughts over and over again, and we just keep. And if we examine and we sit back and contemplate this and observe our thought process, we will see that we begin thinking about something, and it always loops back to the same kind of feelings that we had before. So the belief system leads to a thought, which has us feeling a certain way, which then either initiates behavior or freezes us in place. Generally speaking, when we're not disciplined, this is what happens. So I have a belief system that comes from the culture. Then that belief system that comes from the culture is getting more stuff is better than not getting more stuff. And that belief system, it's fixed in me, and it is reinforced over and over again by all the things that I see on all the stimulus coming to me from the outside in advertising, and not just that, but just the stories we see on TV and in the movies. So this belief system is set. And it is difficult for me to realize that this nonstop consumerism is actually just another phrase that describes cancer. That this is exactly what a cancer cell does. It thinks that all it needs to do is get more stuff. It wants more blood, more food, so that it can reproduce itself. That's all it thinks about. So so our belief system has us, if we just accept it at face value and operate within it, it has us set up to be a society of cancer cells, eating the planet. Well, this is not helpful. But there's nothing wrong with stuff. There's nothing wrong with having an affluent life. What's wrong is the mindless pursuit of more at the expense of the common welfare, at the expense of what we would call the unity of all life. So, but the belief system is so centered and so fixed that we just keep spinning around and around and keep coming back to the desire for more stuff. So I have a belief system that's set in me by my upbringing. This is also a cultural thing. And you hear it, it's talked about every Sunday in this country, especially in a lot of churches, that everybody is a miserable sinner. Now, you may think that you have released that belief system. You may think that you have grown out of it, that intellectually you have rejected it. But it is in there. And even those of us who were not subjected to that in early life felt the effects of it from the culture itself. So, this belief system has me continually thinking that I'm just naturally inadequate. Not consciously, I'm not thinking that consciously. I'm just thinking thoughts that kind of point to that. So prayer. Prayer is a way, and we can talk about others too, but these two examples will serve for this morning. That prayer, properly practiced, is a way out of these belief systems. Because this is something that I so many times I can remember thinking it myself, is that thoughts just come into my mind. I really don't have any control over them. There they are. They're there. So when somebody said to me, you need to discipline, I remember reading Course in Miracles the first time, and it says you are very undisciplined in your mind. You allow your mind to do whatever, and you do not get control over it. And I thought, well, I can't help what I think. That thoughts just come. And of course, then the next one that comes after that is I can't help how I feel. I just feel that way, right? And in this regard, this idea of I can't help how I feel, if we don't like somebody, we have a difference with them, and they come up in conversation, and we'll say something negative about them, our defense is, well, that's just how I feel about it. That's just how I feel about it. As if it's not up to us how we feel. But actually it is up to us. It's up to us how we feel, and it's up to us how we think. And so prayer is the key to this. We decide right now, people who practice prayer, you do this every day anyway. You decide which words you're going to give to God. You decide what your prayers are going to be. And then you channel those, you send those towards God. Well, you can do the same thing with all your thoughts. I know it seems like a big task, but it can be done. And the secret to it is to not get upset when you begin to think the thoughts you didn't want to think, but rather to say no. To say, no, I'm not going down that path today. I have these other thoughts that I would rather think. So a good tool and very useful is to write a list of affirmations. Some kind of positive statement that applies to different areas of your life and areas where problems may have been occurring that actually reflect the opposite good thing from what you have been experiencing. And when the thoughts come to mind that lead back to those same conditions which you are not happy with, substitute the thought. Say, no, I'm not going to think this, I'm going to think that. Now, obviously, we are having thousands and thousands, I don't know what the number is, I could go look it up. Google it. How many thoughts you have a day? I don't know. But interspersed, we can decide that we are going to substitute this positive thought for the one that we have identified is continually causing us suffering. And if we think about it, it's not just that bad things are showing up in the outer world, because it could be that at this moment, temporarily, we are very fortunate in the outer world. But we still have a bunch of inner suffering going on. And when I say inner suffering, I'm talking about any time that we are feeling enraged with someone or some situation, any time that we are afraid of something, even something that may something that it looks like it's about to happen, something that may happen. Any time that our feelings are hurt, anytime we are feeling rejected, not appreciated, all of that is suffering. All that is suffering. So it could appear we could be very successful in life. Anybody else looking at us would say, "Oh, geez, look at them. They're doing really good," and they may be envious. That's suffering too. But on the inside, we are suffering, and this is really something that we should understand. That everybody, no matter how they appear on the outside, is to one degree or another suffering. Sometimes. Now, some are more successful at this discipline of changing their minds, and so they suffer less. I want to be one of the ones that suffers less. And so then you would think, well, this would be the solution then. I am going to pray. I'm going to ask God to please let me suffer less. And then I'm going to wait to see if he's in a good mood. And if he's in a good mood, I'll suffer less, and then you can't figure it out. Sometimes you're thinking, well, is it because God's in a bad mood that I'm suffering, or that these things are happening in the world? Is God mad at us? Or is he just not paying any attention? Or is he just, like a little mischief maker? Or is he just crazy? Well, none of that is the case, because God is not interfering in the world. This is all up to us. What's going on in the world is really up to us. God is not interfering. And I know this is something that God is providing an opportunity for good at every moment. But it's up to us to choose it. This is what free will is all about. At every moment, in every situation, God is offering us an opportunity for good, and it's not a mystery. The opportunity for good is what's best for everyone involved. And we play a very powerful role in making this come about by our choice. And so here again is the discipline of thought. When something occurs, I can either go down the road of suffering for myself and for those around me, or I can decide that I want to be the one to be goodwill in action. I want to be God's will in action. And this is a discipline of the mind. First of all, it's a discipline of the mind to stop in the midst of a calamity, even in the midst of a small disaster. It is difficult to stop for a moment in the middle of it and say, wait a minute, what am I choosing here? Let me look for that opportunity for good and know that in every problem, the solution lies somewhere in there. And it always is going to have to do with the common welfare, the common good, what's best for all of us. Because, contrary to some political opinion, we really are all in this together. We're all in this together. And so we have some responsibility, well, first for ourselves, but we also have some responsibility for others. Yes, we are not, it is not just that we are our brother's keeper, we are our brothers. This is how close the connection is. We are different aspects of each other. And so in this family, we have a responsibility to provide what we have temporarily more of than the other person does. It's okay. There's plenty. We don't have to worry about not having enough. There's plenty. And when I say not having enough, I'm not just talking about material things. I'm talking about the stamina, the fortitude, the abilities, that temporarily we have talents, we have gifts to give to others that others may not have. And we don't have to worry about depleting them. We just go out and give them. So this is prayer. So I pray to God to end my suffering, to end somebody else's suffering, and then I can read it a number of different ways. I can read it that God didn't respond at all, or that some people said sometimes God says no. I mean, that's okay. I'm not here to talk anybody out of their beliefs. I'm going to offer some ideas, and you take what you want and leave the rest. It's okay. But God's not saying no. Never. God's saying, if this is what you want, go for it. Remembering that there's consequences. This is the whole idea of free will. You can do whatever you want to do. But if you want to be happy, if you want to stop suffering, choose goodwill. Choose God's will. And this is, of course, it seems to be a mystery, especially, when those of us who get in a recovery program and they're talking about looking for God's will for us and the power to carry it out, and everybody's trying to figure out what that is. And I remember the first time that I heard about it, sounded like the images in my mind was to do God's will meant to live a life of austerity, to live a life of the picture, now see, this has got to be cultural. The picture comes to my mind of living a life of poverty, a monk kind of life, right? That's not it. That when we understand that what God's will for us is to bloom, to give that which is within us to life, so that life can return to us. And so this then is the focus of prayer. The focus of prayer, think about prayer as being, I'm going to affirm the good. This is like the most powerful kind of prayer that we can get ourselves involved in. Instead of begging God to give us one thing or another, affirm that you already have the ability to achieve whatever it is that you want. And you don't have the ability in your small self, not in your ego. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about you have the ability given you by your Heavenly Father, by your Creator, to achieve, to come to whatever it is that you desire to come to. Because if it's actually a desire, which by the way means of the Father, if it's actually a desire that is for the common welfare, then that desire is actually planted in you by creation. Now, if it's a desire of the ego, you can still get it if you want. But there's consequences to that. But it's up to you. Go ahead. The power is there. You can affirm for all of the things of the ego that you want. And many of them will be delivered. And many problems will go along with them. So, let me learn to quiet the mind. Let me learn to be able to decide which thoughts are worthy and which thoughts I just want to release. And so this is it can be frustrating because we want, actually, and it's the truth, not just us here, but we all really, somewhere in us, want to operate in goodwill. We all want to be free of suffering, and really, we want others to be free of suffering. But we get caught up in these old patterns of the mind, and it's difficult to see the forest for the trees. We get caught up in these patterns of mind, and we keep repeating, we keep getting afraid, and we want to blame someone else. Last night I heard a very unfortunate conversation at work, and there was a lot of racial prejudice involved, and then I was going to get mad and go and talk to the person and tell them how inappropriate the conversation was. But then, as she went on, I saw what the real problem was. And I should see